G'day folks, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the iSteady Pro 2. If you're a regular to my channel, you might recall I reviewed the original iSteady Pro last summer. The iSteady Pro 2 comes with some nice new features, so let's open up the box, we'll see what's new, and we'll see if it's worth the upgrade from the original iSteady Pro. So like I stated at the beginning of the video, I reviewed the original iSteady Pro, and that review, in my opinion, was kind of neutral. It wasn't a bad little gimbal for the price. This is a budget gimbal. You can get them for under $100, and I think the original iSteady Pro you could pick up for about $70. So for the price, it did a really good job. The iSteady Pro 2 has a lot of new features, and we'll cover them as we go along. But one of the really important new upgrades that I think is very important is that they've added 30% more motor torque. I think that was part of the problem of the original one, is that the motors were a little weak. If you were doing something and there was a lot of movement all of a sudden, you could kind of pick it up in the gimbal. The gimbal had a hard time keeping up with it. So we'll see if the new, more powerful motors make a difference when it comes to stability. So let's just open up the box here and we'll see what all comes in the package. So the first thing you can see here, it comes in a nice little case. This is a material case. A lot of the cases that you get with gimbals now is that styrofoam, so it's kind of nice that they still include a case. The overall size of it isn't too bad, so it will still fit in a backpack with no issues. Personally, myself, when I'm packing a gimbal in my backpack, I don't pack it with the case. I find the cases do take up unnecessary room. So we'll open it up here and we'll see what's all inside. First we have our user manual, silica gel. You can see here it comes with a tripod, little mini tripod. We have a micro USB to USB-A cable. And then we have these little mini cables here. We have two of them. Now these little mini cables are used to charge your GoPro while it's mounted in the unit, and we'll take a closer look at that once we get going along here. Then of course we have the unit itself. So let's take a closer look at the gimbal here. First off, on the back we have a trigger button. This trigger button does two things. The first thing it does when you hold and press it, it puts it into sport mode. So if you have to do some really quick movements, the gimbal motors can keep up. The other thing it does, a double press will recenter the gimbal. On the side here we have our charging port. You would use the micro USB cable that comes with it to charge it up. There's a 3600 milliamp battery inside and it's rated for about 12 hours usage. Beside that we have a USB-A port, and essentially it turns this into basically a power bank. You can charge any device that you want from that port there. On the side here we have a quarter 20. It's a nice easy way to add a light to your setup, or if you want to put a smartphone mount on there if you want to use your smartphone as a monitor. On the bottom here we also have another quarter 20 for attaching things like tripods or extension poles. On the side here we have our power LED indicator. Now it's kind of maybe hard to see here. We have another micro USB port there, and that's where you can use these smaller cables that came with it to charge up your action camera while it's mounted in the unit. On the front here we have various buttons. We have a joystick. You can use it to move in any direction you need it to. This button here is our mode button, and there's 4 different modes on this unit. All the standard modes that you're used to on gimbals like lock and follow. It also has an inception mode, which is mode 4. This button here is our power button. You can see there that it also has a record symbol on it, and that feature is only compatible with the SJ cams. Now this unit here is compatible with many different action cameras such as the Osmo Action, GoPro Hero 7 Black, the Hero 5 Black, Hero 6 Black, basically any action camera that has a similar shape and size to a GoPro. Now a big question is, with these kind of gimbals, are they still relevant in 2019? And the answer is yes, for a couple different reasons. The first most common reason that you would want to use a gimbal is if you're in a low light situation. Both the Osmo Action and the GoPro have built-in stabilization, and the stabilization is actually quite good. However, in low light situations, the stabilization is kind of compromised. They need a lot of light in order for them to work effectively. Not only that, if you're using things like ND filters, you're essentially cutting the light to the sensor, so your stabilization is not going to be quite as good when you're using an ND filter. The other reason you maybe want to use a gimbal with your action camera is that every time you turn on different things like Rock Steady for the Osmo Action or the GoPro Hyper Smooth, it crops in and you have a more narrow field of view. So you can disable the onboard stabilization and that will maximize your field of view. You can then put it in a gimbal and still get a nice smooth shot. Another way to look at it too is when you go out, a lot of people bring a power bank with them anyways. So essentially this thing can function just as a 3600 milliamp power bank. And I'll just show you here how this charging cable works, these little mini charging cables. And to use the charging feature while your GoPro's mounted, you just take your cable, the appropriate one for the kind of camera that you have. You just plug it into the back there. It's probably best to remove your door just so you don't lose it while you're out in the field. You then just plug it into your GoPro like that. You'll notice it's not charging yet. It's not going to start charging until we power it on. As you can see, now it's charging. So now I'm just going to head out, we'll take some footage, and we'll see what kind of stabilization we can get from it. So there you go, folks. There's just some quick footage I captured using the iSteady Pro 2 and the GoPro Hero 7 Black and the Osmo Action. Now, a couple observations after using this over a couple days. It still has a bit of an issue that I had with the first one, and that is it drifts a little bit. Sometimes when you're trying to walk straight and you're trying to get some nice smooth footage, it sometimes kind of moves off to the side a little bit. It's very minimal and really not very noticeable, but that does still happen. The other problem that I did experience with it, which I did experience with the first one as well, and that is the horizon kind of gets a little bit tilted sometimes. For example, if you have it in all follow and you're turning corners and doing different things, sometimes when it goes to level back out, the horizon's a little off. Now that's easily corrected with this button at the side. It is very minimal, but it is something you should be aware of. Now, do I recommend the iSteady Pro 2? Well, my answer is yes and no, if that makes sense. First of all, yes, I do recommend it. For the price, it's actually a pretty good gimbal. You can get some nice smooth footage with it. And really, nowadays, with today's action cameras and the built-in stabilization, a gimbal is not something that you're going to be using very often, so you don't want to invest a lot of money in a gimbal. There's just those odd times that you might need one, and then you do have one at your disposal. So it's better to spend under $100 on a gimbal that's something that you may not use very often than to spend 2 or even 3 times the amount on a gimbal. Now, the other part to my answer, and that is the no, I don't recommend this gimbal to people who are in the market for a gimbal that they're going to be using very regularly. In that case, there are better gimbals on the market, such as the Phaotech G6 or even the Karma Grip. Well, folks, that is kind of my review of the iSteady Pro 2 by Hohem. A few little quirks, but well worth the money for under $100. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and found it informative. Give it a thumbs up if you did and found it had value. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we'll see you in the next one.